A guy cleaning out his grandfather's boathouse found a tarnished copper minnow shoved in a coffee can full of rusty hooks. He almost dumped the whole can in the trash. That lure alone was worth $20,000. Most of what's in an old tackle box is exactly what it looks like: junk. Rusted hooks, melted worms, line turned to dust. But collectors comb through every last one because sometimes junk is hiding a paycheck. A wooden lure with glass eyes. A reel with a cursive engraving worth more than the rod it's on. A stamp the size of a fingernail that turns a $2 yard sale find into a four-figure sale. Comment below if you've got an old tackle box or fishing gear collecting dust somewhere. I'll tell you what to look for. Here are 15 everyday pieces of fishing gear that are quietly worth a fortune in 2026. Vintage fishing line spools. Before nylon monofilament existed, fishing line was braided silk or linen, wound onto small tins or beautifully illustrated cardboard spools from companies like Ashaway or Gladding. Nobody's buying these to actually fish with them. They're buying the spool itself, still holding its original unused line, purely for the shelf, to recreate that authentic 1930s cabin look. A clean, illustrated spool with the line still intact brings $50 to $250. The illustration and tin condition matter just as much as the brand name. A torn label can cut the price in half, even with perfect line inside. Next up, a tackle box most people would toss without a second look. Vintage UMCO aluminum or copper tackle boxes. Picture digging through a garage and finding a heavy metal tackle box with a pebbled aluminum finish, embossed with a logo that reads UMCO Corp. Most people see rust and dents and figure it's not worth keeping. A standard one really is only worth 50 or $100, but a large, pristine multi-tray model, especially the copper-plated versions, is a completely different story. Those clear $300 to $700. Check the trays. A missing or cracked tray knocks the price down fast, since collectors want the whole system intact, not just the outer shell. Then there's a lure that looks like a mistake, but isn't. Rare colorways of the Heddon Zara Spook. When Heddon moved from wood to plastic in the mid-20th century, most of what they made was completely ordinary. A standard Zara Spook today is worth about $5. But certain limited or genuinely accidental color runs became instant collector items the moment anglers noticed how different they looked on the shelf. Look for patterns like goldfish scale or strawberry spot. A documented, crisp example of one of these rare colorways can fetch $200 to $800, and the paint pattern is the entire tell. Everything else about the lure looks completely normal. Here's one where the French stamp changes everything. Early Mitchell 300 spinning reels. The French-made Mitchell 300 is the most recognizable spinning reel ever produced, and they made millions of them, which is exactly why a standard scratched-up example is only worth about $15. But flip it over and look for a small engraving that reads Mitchell in cursive script, not the later block letter plastic badge. That detail alone separates junk from genuine early production. An early 1940s or 50s first version model, complete with its original patterned cardboard box, can clear $300 to $600. Check that the serial number on the foot matches the reel body. Mismatched parts are common on these after 70 years of repairs. Onto something that's basically bottled bait: antique glass minnow traps. A woman at an estate sale in Michigan paid $4 for what she thought was just an old garden jar. It turned out to be a hand-blown glass minnow trap from the early 1900s. A heavy jar with an indented cone opening, built so live bait could swim in but never find its way back out. She'd nearly left it on the table. These were everyday equipment a century ago, and most of them got smashed against rocks decades before anyone thought to collect them, which is exactly why an intact one is rarer than people assume. Thick, clear, or aqua green glass with a wire carrier handle is the shape to look for, and a name like Camp or Orvis embossed right into the glass pushes the price up further. A genuine, unbroken example brings $150 to $500, more than 100 times what she paid for it. If you're already thinking about that box in your garage, Drop a comment with what you think might be in there. Next, a reel most people have genuinely never heard of. Vintage Meiselbach reels. A.F. Meiselbach and brother made some of the earliest mass-marketed reels in America, with model names like the Amateur and the Takapart. These are small, dark reels, often black vulcanite hard rubber, sometimes brass, with a delicate little clicker mechanism on the side that most people have never seen on a modern reel. Completeness is everything here. A reel with all its original parts and a working clicker brings $200 to $800, while a reel that's missing its handle or has a cracked vulcanite body drops fast, even if it still technically spins. Moving into modern territory for a second. Out-of-print Shimano Stella reels. This is the one item on the list that isn't an antique at all. Even reels from the early 2000s are hunted hard by serious anglers who trust the bulletproof internal gearing over anything plastic-heavy being made today. Look for a high-end silver or gold spinning reel explicitly stamped Stella, with model numbers like 4000 FA or 10,000 F. A mechanically smooth example, no grinding, no play in the handle, brings $400 to $800. Anglers aren't buying these for the collector value. They're buying them because they'd rather fish with a 20-year-old Stella than a brand new reel at the same price point. It's a rare case on this list where the resale value is driven by working fishermen, not display case collectors, which makes the market a lot more stable than most of the antiques around it. Here's the one that jumps this list ahead of schedule. High-end swim baits from Roman Made or Depths. Picture a lure the length of your forearm, jointed like a real fish, hand-carved out of premium wood by a Japanese artisan, and released in a batch of maybe a few hundred worldwide. That's the big bait trend among serious bass fishermen right now, and these things sell out in minutes. A Roman-made mother, or a Depths swim bait, 8 to 12 inches long and stamped with the maker's name, brings $300 to $1,200 on the secondary market. Tournament anglers who missed the drop are paying that price out of pure desperation, not nostalgia. This is a hot market moving in real time, not a dusty old collectible. We're already talking four figures, and we're barely halfway through this list. That's the thing about fishing gear. The value doesn't climb in a straight line. Then something with a genuine world record attached to it. Creek Chub, wiggle fish, and plunker lures. At a garage sale in Michigan, a box of old fishing junk sat priced at $2 for the whole lot. Buried in it was a Creek Chub lure with an unusual painted finish, the kind of detail an untrained eye would mistake for damage rather than rarity. The Creek Chub Bait Company made the exact lure that caught the world record largemouth bass back in 1932, which alone tells you how seriously collectors take this brand. Most of their common lures sell for about $20. That garage sale box was priced about right for what most of it was. But rare experimental colors and larger saltwater models are a different animal entirely. Look for glass eyes, a sturdy metal diving lip, and an unusual finish like blue flash or white with red head. Genuinely rare colorways and oversized saltwater examples clear $500 to $3,000. The paint job is doing almost all the work in that price gap. Over in fly fishing's version of fine art, vintage split bamboo fly rods. Before fiberglass and carbon fiber existed, the best fly rods on earth were hand-split from bamboo by makers like H.L. Leonard or the earliest Orvis rod builders. Picture a hexagonal, six-sided wooden rod wrapped in silk thread around each guide. Just above the cork handle, there's usually a handwritten serial number or a maker's stamp. A straight rod with all its original tips, stored in its aluminum tube, brings $500 to $2,500 or more. A warped rod, even from a legendary maker, loses most of that value instantly. Straightness isn't cosmetic here. It's the entire functional point of the rod. Even the tube matters more than people expect, since a rod without its original aluminum case is harder to authenticate and easier to damage in storage. If you're still with me, hit subscribe. I go looking for exactly this kind of overlooked gear every week, And I'd rather show you what it's worth than see it thrown in a dumpster, going back to the lure that started in a Michigan kitchen. Vintage wooden Heddon Dowagiac lures. James Heddon carved his first wooden lures in his own kitchen around 1902, and early models like the Dowagiac Expert and the castable minnow are some of the most hunted lures in the entire hobby. Look for a wooden body, never plastic, with glass eyes instead of painted ones, and multiple treble hooks hanging from intricate metal hardware. An early 1900s example in genuinely good condition brings $300 to $2,500, and that number climbs fast if it's still sitting in its original cardboard or wooden box. Most people who find one of these have no idea Heddon basically invented the category they're holding. A British name that still means something a century later comes next. Hardy Perfect Fly Reels. House of Hardy in the UK has been producing the perfect fly reel since the late 1800s. Early 20th century models are the ones to watch, especially ones with brass faces or unusual line guards. Those are intensely collected today. Look for a dark, circular metal reel stamped Hardy's Patent or The Perfect right on the faceplate. Depending on the exact mechanical variation in size, these bring $800 to $3,000 or more. The line guard design alone can separate a common variant from a genuinely rare one, which is why serious collectors photograph that detail before anything else. We're 4 items from the top and already passed a rare decoy's asking price at some estate sales. Drop a comment if you've made it this far without checking your own garage yet. A father and son name treated like royalty in this hobby is up next. E.F. Payne fly rods. A collector once described the moment he realized what he was holding. He'd bought a rod at an estate sale for the case alone, and it wasn't until he unscrewed the reel seat that he found a tiny silver stamp reading E.F. Payne Rod Company. Ed Payne and his son Jim are considered close to royalty in the history of rod making. People talk about their casting action like it's flawless, and their tone like they're describing a musical instrument, not a fishing rod. Wealthy traditional fly fishermen chase these hard, and a genuine example in original condition regularly trades for $2,000 to $5,000. This isn't nostalgia buying either. Plenty of these rods still get taken out on the water by people who could easily afford a brand new rod and specifically choose not to. Folk art that happens to also be fishing equipment comes next. Antique fish decoys for ice spearfishing. Used across the Great Lakes region for ice spearfishing, these are hand-carved, lead-weighted wooden fish designed to lure a much larger fish toward a hole cut in the ice. Carvers like Oscar Peterson turned what was originally a purely practical tool into something museums now collect as folk art. A generic, unattributed vintage decoy sells for around $50, but an authenticated piece by a master carver like Oscar Peterson can command $2,000 to $15,000. The paint style and the carving technique are what separate the two, and only someone who studied a specific carver's work can tell them apart at a glance. Now back to where this whole video started, the Haskell minnow lure. This is the single most valuable piece of fishing gear in existence, the holy grail of the entire hobby. Riley Haskell patented this copper fish-shaped lure back in 1859, built with a revolving tail mechanism that was genuinely ahead of its time. Look for a hollow copper or brass minnow-shaped body. Then check near the fins for a tiny patent stamp. Easy to miss unless you're looking directly for it. A legendary mint specimen once crossed $100,000 at auction. Even a legitimate example with some tarnish, found sitting in an old box, can still fetch $5,000 to $20,000. That's the lure from the cold open, the one almost dumped out with a can of rusty hooks. It's still out there, in more garages and boathouses than anyone realizes. What nobody tells you before you sell. Don't clean the tarnish off, don't touch up the paint, and don't assume a stamp doesn't matter just because it's tiny. The buyers paying real money for this gear are in specialist tackle auctions and dedicated collector forums, not scrolling a garage sale hoping to get lucky. Photograph the stamp, the eyes, the engraving, before anything gets sold or thrown out. and check completed auction sales, not asking prices. Then tell us what's hiding in your tackle box.